To Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Happy Easter and welcome to Real Britain with me, Darren Grimes, on telly, DAB and online. Today we'll be discussing the Prime Minister's new plan to send some migrants crossing the Channel 4,000 miles to Rwanda. And we'll be talking about the Just Stop Oil campaigners and whether this is the most effective way to spread their message. But first, it's the news with Ray Addison.
Thanks, Darren. It's 1 minute past 2. Here's the latest from the GB Newsroom. The Archbishop of York has joined the Archbishop of Canterbury in criticising the government's plans to send migrants to Rwanda. In his Easter sermon at Canterbury Cathedral, Justin Welby said the plans are the opposite of the nature of God. Similarly, at York Minster, Stephen Cottrell said he found the deal depressing and distressing. The government says it will stem the flow of migrants crossing the Channel.
This season is also why there are such serious ethical questions about sending asylum seekers overseas. The details are for politics and politicians. The principle must stand the judgment of God, and it cannot.
Well, founder of Conservatives Against Racism, Albi Amankona, told GB News he thinks the Archbishop shouldn't involve himself in politics.
Not the first time that the Archbishop has made political interventions. I always think sometimes he is known to overstep the mark politically, I would think. There are certainly people who would agree with his point that this is a moral issue and therefore it's right that the figurehead of a British institution makes a comment on it. But then also there are people who just want the Archbishop to stay out of politics, much like the Queen does.
Boris Johnson has paid tribute to Christians in Ukraine during his Easter Sunday address. His comments come as the Ministry of Defence said that Russia's ultimate objective remains the same, despite shifting its operational focus to eastern Ukraine. Yesterday, the Prime Minister was among several senior British politicians banned from entering Russia by the Kremlin. Speaking partly in Ukrainian, Mr. Johnson urged those in the country to be strong and have courage in your heart.
Those around the world facing fear of persecution, forced to celebrate their Saviour's rebirth in secret, and of course, the Christians of Ukraine, whether they're marking Easter today or its Orthodox equivalent later this month, for whom Christ's message of hope, the triumph of life over death and good over evil, will resonate this year perhaps more than any other. Будьте сильны и майте в сердце odvahu. Вisi, что вовайте на Господа.
Russia has told the last Ukrainian forces defending Mariupol their lives will be spared if they surrender. Moscow claims the steelworks is now the only part of the city not under its control. President Volodymyr Zelensky says Ukraine's defence of the city continues despite Russia's blockade.
The situation is certainly not improving on a daily basis. Our military is blocked, and with them, the wounded people are blocked. There are many dead. Unfortunately, there is a humanitarian catastrophe with a shortage of food, water, and no medications. However, the guys defend heroically. We're grateful to them for that. To be honest, there is no trust in the Russian negotiators about Mariupol.
Prince Charles says it's profoundly moving to see the number of British people ready to invite Ukrainian refugees into their homes. In his Easter message, the Prince of Wales paid tribute to the 200,000 people who've registered for the government's Homes for Ukraine scheme so far. Prince Charles also says he's heartbroken by the suffering experienced by victims of conflict who are forced to seek shelter far from their home. Fresh allegations are being made over the Prime Minister's conduct in the ongoing Partygate scandal. The Sunday Times claims that Boris Johnson led the celebrations at a leaving do for his former press chief during lockdown. Labour's deputy leader, Angela Rayner, says if the latest reports are true, the Prime Minister's actions are indefensible. Mr Johnson is expected to update MPs when they return to the Commons on Tuesday. 2 people have died and at least 11 have been injured after being shot at a party in the United States. Now, a warning, the following clip does contain flashing images. Authorities in the city of Pittsburgh say the shooting happened shortly after midnight at a rental property where nearly 200 people had gathered for a large party. The city's public safety department says investigations are ongoing. And the Duke and Duchess of Sussex have commended the bravery of the Ukrainian team during the opening ceremony of the Invictus Games. Speaking at the event, Meghan told the crowd, "Slava Ukraini," meaning glory to Ukraine. The couple then kissed before Harry delivered an emotional speech telling the Ukrainian competitors, "We stand with you." This is GB News. We'll bring you more as it happens. Now let's get back to Darren and Real Britain.
Happy Easter, welcome back to Real Britain with me, Darren Grimes. Here's what's coming up on the show. Just Stop Oil demonstrators have been trying to obstruct fuel deliveries over the country all week to spread their message. We'll be joined by one of them shortly to discuss if this is the best way of getting their message out there. Sticking with that theme, some of the campaigners call their actions civil disobedience. We'll go back to basics on just what exactly that means. Home Secretary Priti Patel's new immigration policy has caused quite a stir here in Great Britain. We'll be crossing over to Rwanda to speak to a political commentator to see what they make of the plans there. That's what we're talking about for the next hour. But as always, I'd love to know your thoughts on Just Stop Oil campaigners. Do you side with them and what they stand for? Or, like me, do you think they're an irritant, frankly? Tweet me at GBNews or you can email me on gbviews@gbnews.uk. You can watch us online too on YouTube, and don't forget about Facebook. You'll find lots of brilliant content on our GB News page. Cheers very much. I don't know about yous, but I'm utterly sick of a media and political class that reflexively, it seems, lambast any efforts to restrict immigration, with measures roundly dismissed as heinous, hateful or heartless. Reports suggest that Home Secretary Priti Patel issued a ministerial direction to get through the Rwanda asylum plan to deal with our English Channel migrant crisis. Patel had to give this direction because, reportedly, top civil servants are frankly out of touch with the British public when it comes to immigration. If you ask me, folks, it's great to know that we have a Home Secretary, finally, determined to stop open borders and the evil trade of people traffickers. Patel hopes that she can replicate Australia's model. Australia, you see, processes asylum seekers 3,000 miles from its borders on an island in the Central Pacific. The numbers in Australia peaked at 20,000 a year, fewer than our own, it has to be said, but crucially fell to 160 the year following the introduction of the policy. In 2015, none at all made dangerous journeys like the ones we see in the English Channel. We might have ended free movement from the European Union, but no one can argue that we've delivered on the promise to end uncontrolled migration to this country. Look no further than the numbers ferried across the English Channel. In 2018, there were 299. In 2019, there were 1,843. In 2020, there were 8,466. And last year, there was a staggering 28,527. So far in 2022, there have been more than 6,000 brought ashore, with 181 migrants coming across as you were having your fish supper on Good Friday. It's only April, folks. Some predict 60,000 plus by the end of the year, with this summer being a ferry free-for-all. A central argument, folks, against free movement within the EU was the sheer volume of people coming to the United Kingdom. Good economy, good jobs, you name it. Numbers the size of English cities were arriving each year. We risk similar numbers getting here via the English Channel. It would be a humanitarian and democratic impossibility, with the British people losing support in their government and in our immigration system. And folks, thus far, the data tell us that 70% of those arriving are men under 35. Hardly the portrayal of a family of refugees coming here to escape war or persecution. And folks, last time I checked, don't know about you, but Macron might be a bit of an arrogant bore, but France isn't a war-torn nation. And I don't know what the liberal left have got against Rwanda, frankly, in opposing this plan, especially, as I say, for those refugees seeking to escape supposedly war-torn France. The public is overwhelmingly opposed to open borders and the security risks that they present. More than 2/3 of the public don't think that people who arrive illegally from a safe country should be allowed to claim asylum. And I get that, right? If you break our laws, why should you benefit from our hospitality? It's important that we get this right to keep public support for genuine refugees. So, folks, with that said, here's wishing the government well in the inevitable Liberal lawyer court cases that try to prevent Britain from having border controls once again. It's been a busy week for the Just Stop Oil protesters. They carried out raids on the UK's oil terminals as they continue to demand the government stops funding new oil and gas projects. At the start of the week, Downing Street condemned the guerrilla tactics used to target oil supplies. For my Culture Raw debate today, I'm asking, is it time to listen to the Just Stop Oil protesters, or frankly, should we be ignoring them? Dr. Graham Buss is a Just Stop Oil spokesperson and former principal scientist at Shell, and Howard Cox, the founder of Fair Fuel UK and friend of the show. Graham, can I start with you, please? Just start us off. What is the ultimate objective of Just Stop Oil?
Darren, I think I'm here to irritate you some more. Let me tell you who I am first, a little bit more. I worked for Shell for 33 years. I was a scientist and engineer. And I worked with the former chairman of Shell, Ron Oxborough, who was also a chief scientist.
Well, Graham, can I just thank you for the work you did with Shell?
Climate crisis is real, and he said so.
Well, thank you for the work that you did with Shell, because frankly, you've kept homes powered, you've given us everyday products, you've ensured that Britain could function. What a miracle oil is.
I came on this show because I was asked a question that you sent me, Darren. How best is the country to tackle climate change together while putting an end to civil disobedience? That's why I'm here.
Yeah, so how?
You asked that question, how to tackle climate change.
Tell me.
Let me tell you, oil and gas in the North Sea doesn't make us secure. It doesn't keep the cost of living down, and ask yourself, why no windfall tax on the oil companies? Yeah? The government doesn't care about ordinary people, about just their rich mates. You know, we don't own it, they do. We just pay for it.
So, Graham, do you think the way that you're going about this, though, is the best possible way to communicate your message?
Yes. Look, I agree with Howard. We're in a fuel crisis at the moment. Just Stop Oil don't want that either. We care about the price of energy for the less well-off. The cost of living crisis is a war on the poor, and it should end. And it's the government's fault.
Howard, then, shouldn't you just get out your car, get on your bike and get with the Just Stop Oil programme?
Well, the answer to that is a big fat no. Darren, and thank you and happy Easter, my friend. One of the things we should be looking at here is actually that every single driver in this country and everyone who actually uses oil actually wants to breathe clean air and wants clean energy. All those things. And what is sad about this is this protest is senseless. And people, you are alienating everyone else that you need to get on your side. That is the issue. Well, I'd love to sit down and have a debate with you. I've been on so many media programmes in the last 2 weeks about this issue, and I've asked everyone I've been up against or talking to, and including the BBC, and I was up against Nikki Campbell, who laid into me, calling me a climate change denier. I am not. I'm a climate change realist. What we need to do is sit round the table and work together and find a better way for cleaner fuels. But at the moment, in this cost of living crisis, which you highlighted, and thank you for that, I really appreciate that, and I congratulate you for saying that, we need to work together to find a better way future. We can't do it overnight, and we can't do it by gluing ourselves to tankers, especially if they're only taking cooking oil.
Graham, do you agree with what Howard said there, right? The message might be right, but the tactics are just turning people off.
I don't believe that for one moment. The climate crisis is now. It's just as real as the cost of living crisis. And that's why Just Stop Oil is making this very simple demand. No new oil and gas licences in the UK. It's very simple.
Well, Graham, can I ask you a question then? If you genuinely believe, right, which you purport to do so, and I don't doubt your sincerity for 1 second, but if you genuinely believe that the world could end,
mate.
the
It's
world
facts.
could end. Well,
it's not about belief, it's
let me
facts.
finish. Come on, I let you finish. You can let me finish. If you genuinely believe that the world could end in a ball of flames, or indeed we could all drown to death, why would you spend your last days on Earth gluing your bottom to a road if the world is going to hell in a handcart?
Look, the cost of living crisis is serious, but just you wait till the climate crisis really hits. That's why we're doing this.
But you haven't
It'll hit
answered
your
the question.
family like a war. It'll
You
hit your
haven't answered
family
the
like
question.
a war and take everything away that matters to you.
I tell you what is hitting families up and down the country is you lot blocking roads, stopping working people from being able to get to and from work and, frankly, exacerbating the cost of living crisis, Graham.
Look, Darren, you want to know how to bring the country together? GBNews needs to tell the truth about the climate crisis. The best thing you could do is tell your audience...
This is your moment. This is your moment, Graham. You've got your moment here. GBNews are giving you that platform. Come on, make the case.
I'm not going to talk on a show with a climate denier. Thank you for having me on here, and I'm off now. Bye.
Well, Howard, that was quite extraordinary, Howard. What do you make of all of that, Howard? What do you think about being called a climate denier? Because we were saying there, please do make your case. Why, if the world was about to end, would you be gluing your bottom to a road? What you would surely be saying, right, OK, I'm going to be more hedonistic than I've ever been for the rest of my life. There is no denial of climate. I accept that we might be having an impact. But what you're saying, Howard, what you said earlier in your remarks there was that until we get the technology, until we're able to make the transition, that now is not the time, Howard.
Oh, I couldn't have put it any better, Darren. You got it spot on. I mean, there is no climate emergency. There is a climate computer modelling emergency. And what we're seeing at the moment is there is climate change. There's no doubt about it. Things are happening, and we do contribute a bit about it, but not as much as, certainly not as much as India, Brazil, USA, China. They're responsible for 50% of emissions. We're responsible for 1% of emissions. And I always say to every one of those protesters who are, I admire their passion, I always say to them, why are you not going over to those countries and actually protesting about what they're doing with their emissions? We do need to bring emissions down. I'm all for emissions coming down, but you don't do it by inconveniencing people. One particular person called me who drives an ambulance. He couldn't get diesel for his ambulance. He couldn't take people to a hospital. He had to get another person to come in a long distance. It took an hour to come along. They couldn't do it. That's a little thing, but I've got hundreds of those incidences. I've got thousands of emails of people angry, and they're not getting people on their side. But let me say this on this air now, Darren, please, all of you climate protesters, let's sit together and talk about the best way forward, working together rather than inconveniencing people.
Absolutely. And Howard, that's what I wanted to do today. That's what I wanted to have a genuine conversation, and hopefully we will later in the show as well. But I want a genuine conversation where we say, look, we agree with the ultimate ambition. which is to actually reduce our carbon emissions and actually have cleaner air. Who wouldn't want that? But what I do say is that the democracy denial, the riding roughshod over civil liberties and laws, and that isn't the good way to go about it, because that's turning people off, Howard. That's all I was trying to say.
Well, you said it very nicely, Darren. And yes, if they want to call us deniers, let them call us deniers. But if I always throw back at them, do you think man can really make a difference? And now, can we turn back the clock? Because it goes back for years and years and decades and millennia that we've had global warming in different sort of personalities, up and down. We're in a situation now where it's gone up a little bit now. It's going to go down again. We are not going to. Do you remember the ozone layer warnings?
Oh,
all those sort of things. I'm nearly 70 years of age, Darren.
Yeah.
And those ozone warnings, that was the end of the planet. Where have they gone? The ozone hole is closed.
Are you hearing from your members that actually there's a frustration with the fact that it seems that unless you're championing woke causes, such as environmentalism, that you can get away with blocking roads and causing menace for people and actually blocking the transportation of vital fuel sources?
I am hearing that. We've got their supporters are not members, Darren, I'm afraid. They don't pay me any money. I wish they did, because we've got 1.7 million of them. No, what we're getting from it, they're getting very angry because they're being almost accused on block as though they're being deniers. They believe, like we said before, they want cleaner air. They want their children to grow up in a nice, safe, clean environmental condition. They all want that. But they do not want to be inconvenienced, and they can't get to work, they can't get to college, they can't get to hospitals, all those sorts of things. And they are thoroughly fed up. And the government can stop this right now. And that's one, I never thought I'd say this on here. I actually agree with Keir Starmer. We need injunctions on them. Get them off the road.
Yeah, well, I never thought you'd be championing law and order with the Labour Party, but there we are, Howard Cox, the founder of Fair Fuel UK. Thank you very much. We'll invite Dr. Graham Buss, the former principal scientist at Shell, back on the show next week to put his side across. Plenty more to come this afternoon on Real Britain. Next, we'll be going back to basics and answer the question, what is civil disobedience? But first, let's have a look at the weather.
Weather, and the UK is looking dry in the east, but rain will continue edging into the west. Let's take a look at the details. After a mainly dry day, showery outbreaks of rain will steadily move eastwards across the southwest of England later this afternoon and into the evening on a freshening southwesterly breeze. The southeast will end Easter Sunday on a dry note. Sunshine will turn hazy through the afternoon as high cloud spreads in from the west. Outbreaks of showery rain will also be edging eastwards across Wales into the evening. These could be heavy at times, especially in the west. It'll be a dry, bright and warm end to the day for the Midlands. It'll turn cloudier through the afternoon and into the evening, but remain dry until after sunset. The northeast of England will also have a dry and bright end to Easter Sunday with some sunny spells. Cloud will increase here from the west through the afternoon with rain expected overnight. Rain in the west of Scotland will slowly start to edge eastwards into the evening. After a warm and sunny day in the east, cloud will increase ahead of the rain. Rain, which has persisted for most of the day over Northern Ireland, will gradually clear this afternoon with sunny spells and showers following from the west. It'll feel fresher too. Tomorrow, rain in the west will steadily move across the UK overnight, clearing all but the far east coast by tomorrow morning. And that's how the weather is shaping up overnight into tomorrow morning.
Coming up today at 6 p.m.
Welcome to a very special GB News Easter programme. We are invited during this short time to enter into the passion, death and resurrection of Jesus Christ. It's an invitation to take part in the most important part of the Christian life. Happy Easter. Alleluia.
The meaning of Easter with Calvin Robinson today at 6 p.m. on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Happy Easter, welcome back to the show. It's time for a quick trip to our virtual classroom. You might have heard the phrase civil obedience or disobedience in the news this week when talking about Just Stop Oil campaigners. So let's get to the bottom of what it actually means. Donahue McCarthy is a climate columnist for The Independent, and he joins me now. Donahue, can I ask you, what actually is civil disobedience in layman's terms?
It would be the peaceful, deliberate breaking of the law to highlight an issue that is facing a certain section of the public. It's been a traditional part of democracies for well over probably 2 centuries. Henry Thoreau famously wrote about it in the United States when he was taking civil disobedience to protest against the slavery the slavery in the United States. It's been, over the last century, practiced in China, India, South Africa, and Europe. Very famously in the UK by the suffragettes, where they took civil disobedience, broke the law to protest against the lack of votes for women. It was done by gay people in the 60s and 70s, when the laws against gay people were punitive. And so we had the Stonewall riots, and we had the ACT UP protests, and now we have the climate civil disobedience protests.
So what powers do the police actually have when it comes to tackling civil disobedience on things like roads, for example, and other forms of blockade, I guess you might say?
Well, the powers of the police will apply to whatever laws are broken. So if the protesters are breaking, for example, sitting on the road obstructing, then they're obstructing the highway. The police have the Public Order Act. They're able to declare any protest, any peaceful protest, illegal. And if the protesters don't leave, they're subject to arrest and prosecution.
Donahue, do you think that actually the powers of the police are robust enough to combat civil disobedience?
Well, it depends what you mean by combat. Did you think the suffragettes should have been combated? Do you think gay rights should have been combated? Do you think the Martin Luther King should have been combated? This is what we're talking about, is that there needs to be a balance in a civil society between the powers of the police to take action when the law is broken deliberately by protesters, and the rights of protesters to actually act on crucial issues to society. All of the issues, including climate change, is probably of all of the civil disobedience movement in the human history, is probably the most important and most crucial. The International Panel on Climate Change has very clearly last week stated that we have now passed the situation where we can avoid serious implications, but we will possibly avoid the worst implications if we take action. And so they have called governments criminal. They've called them arsonists for what they're doing in expanding fossil fuel production, for example, in the North Sea. So it's about a balance. And I think the law currently in Britain is reasonably balanced, but the powers proposed by the UK government's police bill are draconian. They're Putin-esque. They're completely beyond the pale in a civil society.
Well, Donahue, do you know what? We might be in agreement on that. I'm not too sure about that bill as far as civil liberties are concerned myself, especially if we consider, I would have been out there campaigning against lockdowns. I would have been out there campaigning against attempts to overturn Brexit. So perhaps we're allies on that issue. But I wonder what you would say to someone watching this show now who says, well, look, I'm with you entirely that climate change is happening, that climate change is serious, and that we need to do something to reduce our impact on the natural environment. But they look at the stats and they see that Britain, the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, is responsible for less than 1% of global CO2 emissions. And they say, well, hang on a minute, Donahue, why don't you and your activists campaign more in China? Why don't you campaign more in India? Why the United Kingdom? Why make the lives of people here miserable?
Well, actually, there's a wrong premise in the question. Two reasons why. Britain is less than 1% of the global population, so we should take responsibility for our 1%. But secondly, Britain is a major centre. Britain is a major centre of the global fossil fuel investment community. Over 15% of global investments in fossil fuel expansion occur from the City of London. Over 50% of the insurance industry for the fossil fuel industry is based in the City of London. So the United Kingdom is a massive centre of the global fossil fuel industry, way beyond our 1% carbon emissions. And the second point I'd make, you are right. China, India, America have huge populations, much larger than ours, and so their emissions, unsurprisingly, are larger than ours. And we need them urgently to cut them. We need China to cut. You're absolutely right. We're on the same page. But how can we go to China and say, you must cut your carbon emissions if we haven't cut ours? And other than electricity production, the UK is failing on transport, food, meat production, aviation, transport. It's failing to cut any emissions on those sectors, whereas we are cutting them on the electricity sector.
Yeah, I mean, Donahue, I would argue that actually Britain is leading the world as far as its reduction of global CO2 has been concerned, and actually that we should be proud of that, and maybe what you're calling for was going a little bit too fast.
We're having a civil debate. So I've made a civil point. I've made the point that 15% of global investments are based in the UK. So how can you say we're taking responsibility for our emissions?
Because I fundamentally don't believe that fossil fuels, which are responsible for the way in which my grandmother, for example, sat at home on her own, can heat her boiler, Donahue, because I don't think a wind turbine is going to be doing that anytime soon. I don't know about you. Well, but Donahue, we're going to have to leave it there.
Electricity already is being produced by wind turbines.
Electricity,
and it's a third of the price of fossil fuels.
Indeed, but that's not the gas. Thank you, Donahue McCarthy. Thank you very much for your time. You're with GB News on TV and DAB Radio. Next, the Conservative MP for Dudley South, Mike Wood, will join me for my Grilling from Grimes segment. Now it's time for a check on the news headlines with Ray Addison.
It's 32 minutes past 2. Here's the latest from the GB newsroom. The Archbishop of York has joined the Archbishop of Canterbury in criticising the government's plans to send migrants to Rwanda. In his Easter sermon at Canterbury Cathedral, Justin Welby said the plans are the opposite of the nature of God. Similarly, at York Minster, Stephen Cottrell said he found the deal depressing and distressing. The government says it will stem the flow of migrants crossing the Channel. Boris Johnson has paid tribute to Christians in Ukraine during his Easter Sunday address. His comments come as the Ministry of Defence said that Russia's ultimate objective remains the same, despite shifting its operational focus to eastern Ukraine. Speaking partly in Ukrainian, Mr. Johnson urged those in the country to be strong and have courage in their heart.
Those around the world facing fear of persecution, forced to celebrate their Saviour's rebirth in secret, and of course, the Christians of Ukraine, whether they're marking Easter today or its Orthodox equivalent later this month, for whom Christ's message of hope, the triumph of life over death and good over evil, will resonate this year perhaps more than any other. Будьте сильны и майте в сердце odvahu. Вisi, что вовайте на Господа.
A quick warning that the following clip does contain flashing images. 2 people have died and at least 11 have been injured after being shot at a party in the United States. Authorities in the city of Pittsburgh say the shooting happened shortly after midnight at a rental property where nearly 200 people had gathered for a large party. Investigations are underway. On TV, online and on DAB+ radio, this is GB News. We'll get back to Real Britain with Darren Grimes for that grilling after this short break.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's 2 questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you, or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
It's 2:37 and it's time for my Grilling from Grimes segment. It's been a busy week of news. I think we can all agree on that. Boris Johnson and Rishi Sunak were given fixed penalty notices. Just Stop Oil have been causing havoc all over the country. The Home Secretary, Priti Patel, announced new immigration plans, which the Archbishop of Canterbury, Justin Welby, has called ungodly. So Mike Wood, Conservative MP for Dudley South, he joins me now in the hot seat to discuss all of that. Mike Wood, thank you very much for your time. I want to start with the comments from the Archbishop of Canterbury there, Justin Welby. He's branded the government's plans to send asylum seekers from the UK to Rwanda as the opposite of the nature of God, which is a pretty damning assessment, and on Easter Day of all days. My personal view is that the Archbishop of Canterbury certainly shouldn't be political on Easter Day of all days, but there we are. What did you make of that?
I think that they were unwise comments. I think that the proposals that the Prime Minister and the Home Secretary unveiled this week are aimed actually at helping to reduce the number of people risking their lives at sea, while still offering people who are fleeing persecution a safe place free from persecution whilst their claims are assessed. It helps to tackle evil people smuggling gangs. It helps to reduce the tragic losses at sea that we've had. It's worked well in Australia. We've heard from the Australian ambassador how successful their scheme was. And I think this is a sensible and proportionate measure to make sure that people who need asylum can actually get the protection they need whilst their applications are considered, without actually acting as a draw for people to be paying people to smuggle them across Europe and then risking their lives on craft and boats that can barely float.
I don't know if you spend as much time on the cesspit, also known as twitter.com, as I do, but what I've seen, interestingly, is a lot of sneering and sniping about Rwanda in particular. Are you interested in the fact that all of a sudden it's, okay to sneer at Rwanda when actually, Rwanda seem to be doing quite well at the moment?
I think that some of the responses we've had on Twitter, other social media, but also parts of the mainstream media, really verge on imperialism and the kind of racism that many of those people would take pride in attacking if they came from a government minister or for a presenter on your channel.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, the Home Secretary was reported to have had to issue a rare ministerial direction to push through these plans, meaning that she takes the ultimate responsibility for it. I bet your constituents are telling you, I assume, that actually they're quite happy with the proposals and they're, not excited, but they're somewhat, give it their reluctant support, I would imagine, that finally something is being done about this, because it's felt like Britain is just completely powerless as far as the crisis in the English Channel is concerned.
Yeah, absolutely right. I mean, the channel crossings, those small boats crossing the channel, it's been consistently one of the top issues that I've received emails and letters about over the past few years. People want action to be taken. They want effective action to be taken. And actually, they do think that this is proportionate. And if anything, people's main complaint is it should have happened sooner. And that's why the Home Secretary has had to issue that ministerial direction, because people don't want to spend the next 2 years whilst people draw up the right projections. And we've seen how accurate a lot of the projections that come from government advisors can be over the past 2 or 3 years. People want actions now, so Pretty's absolutely right to issue this direction. Of course, the Home Secretary takes personal responsibility for the success or failure of this. It's a key part of our manifesto that we have to deliver. And so as a government, we all take personal responsibility for making sure that this succeeds.
What do you say to those, though, that perhaps accuse Brexit Britain of becoming Little Britain? Because the former International Development Secretary and the current MP for Sutton Coldfield, Andrew Mitchell, called it impractical, immoral and incredibly expensive. Now, this at a time when he, I believe, was also critical of cuts to the foreign aid budget. Is he getting Britain wrong?
I think that's a completely wrong reading of the situation. Obviously, what we've seen with the new plan for immigration is a much fairer and in many ways generous immigration policy that treats people from around the world equally, regardless of the country they're from, which region of the world they're from, the colour of their skin, instead of favouring overwhelmingly white people coming to the UK from Western Europe on free movement. We've got an immigration policy that's now been in force for 18 months that actually considers people on the basis of what they can bring to our country, what they can add to our economy, to our society, to our culture, to our people. And that's got to be a better way of doing it. That's the opposite of small Britain. That's the kind of global Britain that I campaigned for in the EU referendum. And I want to see us continue to deliver that.
Mike, earlier in the show, we heard from the Just Stop Oil spokesperson, Dr. Graham Buss, and Birmingham was one of the areas targeted this week. What did you make of the protest? Are the police being too soft here? Because I imagine, again, that's another gripe of some of your constituents, because it strikes me, Mike Wood, that as long as you're championing woke causes, you can actually get away with criminality in Britain.
I think it looks like that too often in a lot of the country. I don't think anybody believes that whether it was an anti-lockdown protest or an anti-Brexit protest, the protesters would have been allowed to get away with half what we've seen with some of these protests here, but also in previous environmental protests and some of the social protests as well. People expect the police to enforce the law as it is. We've seen that happen in parts of the country. In North Warwickshire, we've seen hundreds of arrests. We've also seen the council take out an injunction to allow for the depot for lorries to move in and out of the depot. We've seen similar in Thurrock with many hundreds of arrests, but sadly, there are some police forces that are much less proactive, who seem less interested in enforcing the rule of law and allowing people to actually move about the country, carry on with their legal activities, than they are with the sensitivities of a woke campaign cause. And sadly, I think sometimes that seems to be the case in the West Midlands as well. And I think West Midlands police need to make sure that that where there are protests in Birmingham that are stopping this essential infrastructure, that they use their powers proportionately but effectively to make sure that people can go about their legal activities.
Robust remarks. I'm quite concerned, and I'm sure, again, your constituents are saying the same, which is that this is a country going above and beyond, world leading, in fact, as far as its reduction of carbon emissions is concerned. Do you wonder what actually these activists want? Because they keep saying they want to be listened to. Well, Mike, if you ask me, your party's government is going a little bit too far too fast, and actually the demands that they're making on the British public are in part responsible for the fact that we're all struggling with a cost of living crisis at the minute.
Look, I mean, clearly climate change is an important issue, but it has to be balanced with all the other important issues, such as you said, the cost of living, energy prices, transport prices, the impact that has on people's livelihoods. We have done better than almost any other country in the world over the past 30 years in terms of reducing our carbon emissions. The energy security strategy that was published last week shows how we're going to go further than that in terms of making sure that we have enough nuclear and renewable capacity to reduce our dependence on oil and other fossil fuels. So we are doing a huge amount, but everybody has a right to peaceful protest. What they don't have the right to do is substitute mob rule for the rule of law by using physical force to stop people doing their legal activity, doing their jobs, carrying out, whether it's going to work, whether it's, stopping ambulances being blocked, crossing, going to hospital, stopping printing presses working. That's why I think the powers in the police and sentencing courts bill are actually needed, and they are proportionate to make sure that people can protest, but everybody else can actually go about their lawful activities without having to give in to the mob.
Well, Conservative MP Mike Wood, thank you very much for your time, and happy Easter as well. Now, folks, it's 2:47 and a quick look ahead to something that'll be on Nana's show after 4 p.m. She'll be speaking to GB News' very own Calvin Robinson, who has accused the Church of England of holding him back because of the simple fact that he holds conservative views. His next step to reach priesthood would be to work as a curate alongside an incumbent priest, but that won't be happening anymore. I'm sure it'll be a fascinating discussion, so do tune in for that. Now, folks, let's move on to the Scrap Reform Keep segment, and today we'll be putting the Rwanda migrant plan through the test. I'm joined now by Robert McKenna, who's a journalist and political commentator who joins us from Rwanda. Robert, what do you make of the UK's plans to send asylum seekers to Rwanda? Because some are saying, well, hang on a minute, why Rwanda? And I say to them, what's wrong with Rwanda?
Thank you very much, Darren. I think I would also answer the same thing. Why not Rwanda? What's wrong with Rwanda? First, Rwanda has also been hosting a number of refugees from across the region. That's number one. Number two, we also have other refugees from across almost miles away in Afghanistan. I have met people from Yemen who have been here since 2014. We also have migrants from Libya. So my answer will also be, why not Rwanda? What's wrong with that?
Yeah, indeed. Our Shadow Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, she has actually said the plan is unworkable, it's unethical, and it's extortionate. And Ian Blackford from the Scottish National Party actually went as far as to call the plan evil. What do you think when you hear hyperbole like this?
I think if Rwanda didn't do it before, I would understand them. But this is something that Rwanda has done. Recently, we have had issue of migrants dying, risking their lives and dying in oceans. We have had migrants in Libya being tortured, being dumped in prisons and dying from there, and even paying their little money to smugglers to smuggle them to Europe and other places. Now, what Rwanda did, I think, even with UNHCR and with the help of African Union, they came up with a plan of bringing these migrants to Rwanda when they're waiting for the process to be processed in Europe and other countries. And this plan worked. I think over 600 now of migrants and refugees coming from Libya are in Rwanda, living a best life and having their life going well, waiting for the process. And I think some even they were processed and they were sent to different countries in Europe. So if Rwanda did this and saved the fellow Africans from dying in oceans and having them here in Rwanda to have a better life, why can't we do it the same thing, and have people from UK? First of all, it's not even, when the people say it's evil, they sound like, there's no one these are people who are coming from UK to have a better life in Rwanda. If it's an economic migrant, you can have a better life in Rwanda and live like normal Rwandans.
Well, that's the key point, Robert.
That's the key point. Saying they're going to be put in camps. Yeah. And that is very sad. When you see the media saying migrants are going to be put in camps, no, they're going to be living with the fellow Rwandans here, and have a better life like any other human being. So when they call it evil, they call it unworkable. I'm like, we have seen it work. Why not now?
Okay. Robert McKenna, thank you very much for filling us in there, journalist and political commentator. I'm very much with you in the keep camp. I think that this is a good proposal, and Priti Patel, if she can pull it off, has pulled a blinder. But there we are. 70 people were arrested during Extinction Rebellion protests across London. 6 people, including 2 Olympic athletes, were detained for scaling and gluing themselves to an oil tanker near Hyde Park on Saturday. Olympic gold medal winning canoeist Etienne Stott glued himself to the tanker. He's just been released from the prison, I assume prison, and he joins me now, or at least detention. The Olympic champion Etienne Stott, hello there. You were detained for taking part.
Good afternoon, Darren. I've been released from the police station. I'll just let you know, so it's not...
OK, that's absolutely fine. You've been released in some capacity, I assume.
Yes, I'm free to talk to you now.
Brilliant. So why have you joined Extinction Rebellion? What was it about them that enamoured you particularly to their cause?
So Extinction Rebellion are taking this climate emergency, trying to demand action from our government, because right now our government is saying one thing and doing another. Let me quote, the Secretary General of the United Nations, Antonio Guterres. It says, and I've got it written down here, some governments and business leaders are saying one thing and doing another. Simply put, they are lying. So in the climate and ecological emergency, our government is saying one thing and doing another, and they are lying. And Extinction Rebellion is demanding our government to stop fossil fuel investments, which is something that the International Energy Agency has said they should do last year. This is a very sensible thing to do in the climate emergency. But our government, for reasons that we may get to speak about as we go along here, are doing the exact opposite. So well, really, I'm here to basically try and hold my government to account for the decisions it's making right now.
I hear you, Etienne. But what would you say to those who say, well, hang on a minute, Just Stop Oil are calling for the government to listen to them on all of this, when actually a lot of people will be saying, listen, hang on a minute, what have we been doing up until now? Because it seems to me that you've got the government on your side, you've got much of, certainly the media class, the political and media class are very supportive of your aims and objectives. So how much more do you want us to listen to the activism here?
Well, I'm not sure we have got the government on our side at all. In the most recent energy strategy that the government announced just a few days ago, they announced an expansion in coal, oil and gas projects. And that's, again, I'm going to quote Antonio Guterres because he has been speaking about this exactly on topic. He said, investing in new fossil fuel infrastructure is moral and economic madness. So our actions at this time are to try and create a bit of space so that people can actually realize our government is doing the exact opposite of what the United Nations wants us to do right now. They are not on our side. They're not on your side. They're not on anyone's side. They are putting through policies right now that are against everyone's interest. And no one would vote for a burned up planet and the destruction of all our future. And that is exactly what the United Nations is telling us we need to stop.
I also say to you that most people wouldn't vote for, were you to stand for election and actually put yourself at the mercy of the ballot box instead of gluing your bottom to oil tankers. People might say, well, hang on a minute, I'm not going to vote for a political party that wants to make my home colder and my bank balance poorer.
Well, there's two things there. First of all, the government's strategy recently did not do anything. The two things that it could have done that would make the really big difference to make people's homes warmer and make their balances better would have been to announce a massive retrofit scheme to insulate all our homes and make them warmer and reduce our demands and reduce our bills. The second thing it could have done was to invest more in renewable energy, which brings our bills down. Yet, in fact, they've gone down the most expensive route because probably of their pals in the nuclear industry. And like nuclear, they've put all their truck in nuclear, and that is the most expensive form. And the cheapest and simplest form of renewable energy is onshore renewables, and they bottled it. So in fact, the government have not done the right thing here. They've missed two open goals that were clearly there. And let me also just pick up one other thing that you said. I am not going to run for a party. What Extinction Rebellion demand is for a citizens' assembly, which is a collection of ordinary people across sections of society, ordinary people, to come together and make the decisions rather than these political parties that are failing us right now.
No, it's because you're scared of the ballot box. That's why, isn't it, Etienne? Let's be honest. Let's not beat around the bush here.
No, let me come to that. No, let me say, no, that's not true. Sir David King, who was the government's own chief scientific advisor, he's not that anymore. He said the decisions made in the next 2 to 3 years before the end of this parliamentary cycle will shape the future of humanity in the next decades and throughout the century. So we actually haven't got time whilst our government carries on with these policies, which, again, I stress, are against the advice of the United Nations and the International Energy Agency. We haven't got time for them to continue. There's not one person would vote for this. If they understood the implications of what our government is doing, they would say this is insane. And in fact, again, they called it madness. It is madness. We cannot burn our planet up. It does not make sense. And these companies that we're holding to account know what they're doing, and our government is letting them get away with it. It's just crazy.
They might well be saying that. They might well be saying, let's not invest in new forms of fossil fuels. But right now, as far as the period to achieve a net zero is concerned, how are we going to power boilers, gas boilers, for example, 20-odd million of them in this country? How are we going to power those and keep grannies heated, for example, by wind power? You cannot power people's boilers through wind power.
No, you're correct there. So first of all, that's why we have to have this massive retrofit scheme, which will create thousands of green jobs, thousands of jobs. Secondly, we can re-insulate people's houses. That reduces that demand. But the thing really here is that ordinary people, they've got a bit of sense here. They know that this crisis has been created by the fossil fuel companies that are absolutely raking it in. They are making huge profits at this time when people are choosing between heating and eating. And our government is just letting them get away with it. So once we expose this, they're going to understand, people can understand that they are no friends of ours.
Indeed. Well, we just spoke to a Just Stop Oil spokesperson earlier on the show, and he unfortunately left the interview early. I think there's a better way for everyone to come together and have a discussion like we're having now about the planet. So thank you very much for your time. That was Olympic champion Etienne Scott, who was just released from the police today. Thank you to him for getting involved. You guys have been watching Real Britain with me, Darren Grimes, on this Easter Sunday. And just finally, I want to say to you all, a very, very happy Easter to all of you, whether you're worshippers or not, a time to celebrate life, love and light. A very special day, if you ask me. I'll be back tomorrow, folks, at 1 p.m. But for now, I'll leave you with the weather.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debate, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense